Hey everyone, and welcome to the Residency Program final presentations for our project in homelessness. We're super excited to share these final presentations with you as we have had 4 residents complete this program and have worked really hard to prepare these presentations and have gathered some great insights for it. So just a few remarks here as we get started. So first of all, I just want to shout out and give a big thank you to the Sacramento Urban Technology Lab for sponsoring this program. So this is part of the innovation grants from the Sacramento Urban Technology Lab, and this is one of 3 residency programs we have ran. So Women in Data and the Sacramento Urban Technology Lab have ran a residency program on COVID-19 impact, racial disparities, and then today's presentation will be in regards to homelessness. So this is our 3rd and final residency program. Each of these programs have between 5 to 10 residents through them. And so we're looking forward to wrapping up this project and sharing these insights with you. And this program is one of WID's key programs. So within Women in Data, our mission is to increase diversity in data careers. And we do this through awareness, education, and advancement. And within the education portion of what we do, we have the residency program. So this is one of our key pillars, and we're really excited to share with you some of the outcomes from this program. So just to give you a quick overview of what the residents participated in and what they did in the past 8 weeks, they were tasked with the question of how can we use open source data to better understand the causes of homelessness and provide insights for solutions to put an end to homelessness. And so each of these participants worked on this data science problem from beginning to end. So they started with their business understanding and scoping the project, performed data discovery, hypothesis development, analysis, and then validated their results, prepared for the final presentations. And then this week in week 8, you are here attending the final presentations. So definitely a lot of work went into each of these projects. Is really exciting to see just the growth that the residents had from week 1 to now to week 8. And I know they're very excited to share their insights with you. So we will save each of the questions until the end. Each of the residents will be presenting their analysis, but feel free, while they're presenting to add your questions to the Q&A, and then at the end, I'll be facilitating all of the questions. So without further ado, we will bring up our first presenter.
There we go. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our presentations today. My name is Angelica Sanchez, and here's a little bio about me. Last year, I graduated from Sacramento State University. I just hit my first month at my first full-time data role at Code and Theory. I am a junior analyst on the Data Insights and Research team. It's exciting work. I joined Women in Data pre-COVID to learn about working in data and what it looked like, and hopefully to find a mentor, which I did. This project is my first completed side project to add to my portfolio, and I'm really excited to walk you guys through it. So this is our general agenda for today. I'm just going to walk you through the business question, the methodology, the where, why, the good, bad, and then we'll end it off with the final kind of recommendation. These data points are from Sacramento Steps Forward. A single night is from their 2019 point in time count, which are counts of sheltered and unsheltered homeless persons on a single night. So if you're from Sacramento and if you've driven on the freeway, you've been aware of the increasing encampments on the sides of the freeway. My analysis seeks out to answer where are the encampments clustering, why are they where they are, and how accessible are these camps to existing resources? Before we continue, I'd like to share my methodology for my analysis. So for the data sources, let me give you some context if you're not from Sacramento. Sacramento 311 is a single point of contact for the city of Sacramento government services. So through their line, you can report homeless encampments, which 99% of reports are completed with patrol response. While Sacramento 211 is a single point of contact for community, nonprofit, and city provided services in the city of Sacramento. So this is where I collected the data of which accessible resources are offered to homeless populations. This is only physical locations like shelters, food banks, and outreach programs or clinics. And as you can see, I listed the date range and then with the sample size. So on the right, you'll see shaded zip code borders. The darker the shades, the higher the zip code is on the Socio-Need Index. The Socio-Need Index is a measure of socioeconomic need that is correlated with poor health outcomes. The areas of highest need in our community are ranked 5 for high need. The black dots represent the 99 resources of homeless encampments provided by the city and nonprofits. As you can see, there are more and darker shaded areas. Here is a rank 1 area, which is less need, and there are no resources plotted. But this isn't absolute. And as you can see in like the inner city, we have some, black dots in the inner city where there are rank 1 zip codes. So it's not always absolute. If it's empty, if it's 1, it's going to have no resources. We look down here at the bottom, we see an area that's ranked pretty high, but then has no resources available. So what we're really seeing here is the higher the area is ranked on a Socio-Need Index, the more homelessness resources are likely to be available. This is not absolute. This is just using the homeless database resource from the 211 website. So far, this is great. Resources are in the areas where they are needed most. If we begin to start plotting the sample of homeless encampments, we begin to see a different story though. The purple heat map dots represent reported homeless encampments. The white centers mean the areas are dense, which means there's a lot of reports happening here. So I know we have an aerial view, we're going to dive a little bit deeper, but right now we can just see that a lot of them, of course, are in the center of the city. But why are the other ones where they are, or why are the ones in the center of the city where they are? Encampments within the inner city must rely on the cluster of resources. This could suggest that they desire to be sheltered, possibly in temporary housing or long-term, and rely also on the mental health resources found in the downtown area. So we have a lot of resources that are available to them, but they're still clustering under the highway in kind of hidden areas. And some of them are still in the Midtown area where they're not hidden away. While outside the downtown area, it looks like they desire privacy, even at the cost of being farther away from resources. And now you can see the ones that I'm pointing to are camps that are along rural highways or the river, which if you're from Sacramento, you know that the homeless tend to gather there. But something that we must remember is that knowing where homeless are concentrating is important, but also recognizing the differences among the homeless in the inner city and those near the river or less dense areas. The needs of each are going to be different. They're not going to be the same. So let's dive in a little bit deeper. And as you know from the last slide, there's a problem in that resources are sparse as you go outside of the center of the city. So let's look closer at an example. We have this zip code, which has the largest clumps of encampment reports, which are mostly found under the freeway and along light rail tracks. These are not so busy areas when it comes to foot traffic, which explains why they're where they are. And of course, in 2020, not a lot of foot traffic, I'm sure. This is an example of an area where these people in these areas don't have to travel far to access resources, but there are none within their immediate vicinity, as in their zip area. They are looking to cluster on like the right side, hugging those resources that are available to them though. And it's very interesting to see that there's absolutely nothing on the left side. Here we have 2 zips that rank high on the Socio-Need Index. And those gray little dots that you see are trees maintained by the city. which are helpful as they are mostly in areas like retail shopping centers, parks, and main roads. So think, as you see more gray dots, more foot traffic, because a city contractor has to reoccurrently maintain the trees, which could lead to reoccurring reports or possibly even more displacements. You can see now that resources are starting to get less accessible. For example, the one above, 95815, most of the encampments are not near maintained trees, and they are under the freeways, abandoned lots, and rural areas, which suggests that the people experiencing homelessness in this area have a self-constructed shelter and don't possibly maybe rely on the shelter programs or long-term housing. With the only resource in this area being an outreach program, I would suggest that consistent resources like clothing and food banks could be of use to the homelessness in this people in this area. Now at the bottom, we kind of see an inverse thing. We see a lot of the encampments kind of congregating in areas where there's a lot of maintained trees. You see a lot of those purple dots where those gray dots are as well. These are industrial areas or retail shopping centers, which, as I stated previously, more foot traffic, suggesting that people here get displaced a lot. And with the only source accessible in the area being food banks, these people could make use of shelter resources. With our last set here, we can start seeing, more of the same story. No resources within the accessible vicinity. Encampments are being reported in areas that allow privacy, near shaded highways, the river, roads by the river, along the railroads, and light rail tracks. But of course, it's not absolute, as some encampments are reported near parks. So in January 2021, the Sacramento City Council started the process of a 6-month planning phase, and during which they welcome community feedback and review locations for homeless shelters and services throughout the city. So I have 2 suggestions here. My first is that have someone who has access to the HMIS, which is the Homeless Management Information System at Sacramento steps forward to run a similar analysis / audit of accessibility of resources in the zip codes that I've previously mentioned. Due to confidentiality, I had to rely on public data. So this is all open source public data, which relies on those 311 reports, which, quite possibly could not all be homeless encampments. So it's not point in time level data, which is far more accurate. And, with point in time data, you don't just know where the homeless people are, you know who they are, what kind of resources they accessed already. So they're not basing it off of, location and how close they are to a city or nonprofit resource. But I must say, my analysis is based on 301 reports, but I want to remind you all that I use a statistically fair sample size. So I feel like this is an accurate, representation of homelessness and where they are grouping and how close they are to resources. My final suggestion is that even though we are heading into April soon, I believe my insights point out possible areas for the new shelters and services. There is still time to bring it up with the Sacramento City Council, and I really hope that the information that I talked about today is resourceful and possibly makes you think afterwards. Thank you so much for listening, and I will pass it on over to who is presenting next.
Thank you, Angelica and Sadie. So now I can present. Sadie, I cannot be able to present for some reason. Oh, okay. Work now. Okay, thank you everyone. Sorry for the delay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join our presentation tonight. My name is Chang, and a little bit about my background. I'm a candidate for Master of Science in Data Science for University of Pacific. I will be expected to graduate in 2021. So I have work experience in information technology sector in State Department. I love data, and I passionate with data-driven mindset and how it help us to solve different problems across sectors. So if you want to know more about me, please contact me. My LinkedIn profile is below. So okay, so in this research, what I want to focus on is mental health aspect along with other aspect like alcohol and other drug abuse, unemployment, and renting, and whether they could affect significantly homelessness situation in greater Sacramento area or not. So here is different data source that I use. I use data sort grounding from Hut Exchange. Is a point in time estimate for homelessness. And I also wrangle data from Sacramento County homeless debt reports and also Sacramento rental statistic. So let's take a look at the first plot right here in the corner. On the left-hand side, you can see that the number of unsheltered homeless are much higher compared to the shelter transitional homeless and the shelter emergency ones. So what caused this higher number in unsheltered homelessness? It could be because of the lacking in housing inventory. So let's move on to this correlation matrix. As you can see here, this to identify different relationship between a different factor compared to homelessness number in Sacramento. And we can see that homeless housing inventory does not have a high correlation coefficient compared to the homeless number in Sacramento. So um, as we can see here, there's three factors that impact number of homeless in Sacramento significantly. The first one is meth death case. This is the number of people, homeless people that die because they abusing meth, drug using, especially meth. And second of all is the chronic homeless number. Those homeless, those factor indicate the amount of people that being homeless and struggle with their mental illness. And the last one is gross rent. So those have high correlation coefficient rate, and we will go dive deeper into a further analysis. So housing inventory could not impact homeless population alone, but there's more aspects that trigger the homeless population, as we can see here. So next, this is my finding, and let's take a look at the chart on the left-hand side. We can see that the change here is obviously there's a different aspect like chronic homeless number, unemployment rate, and gross rent, and they all follow the change of homeless population in Sacramento across the year. So we can see that in the most recent years, from 2017 to 2019, there's a rapid uh, increase in terms of homeless population. At the same time, we can also see that those people that die due to abusing drug, especially meth, and then chronic homeless people number also increase rapidly. And we can also see that unemployment rate decreased over the years, but start from 2017, it increase it in the curve to increase again. And take a look at the gross rent here, we can see that the gross rent increased over the years, but the rental vacancy rate, it dropped below the vacancy rate of average in California. So we can see the strong relationship in the trending in overall among different factors. And take a look at the right-hand side here, we can see the linear regression models that I plot in our in the perspective of homeless population compared to meth debt case, chronic homeless, or gross rent or unemployment rate. And we can see that those linear regression indicates that those factor has significant relationship compared to homeless population. So but the unemployment rate is the unemployment rate here is not significantly related to homeless population, but when I added it to the model, it impacts significantly and it improved model performance. So as a result, we have the dependent variable is number of homeless people from 2007 to 2019, and the significant value is low, which is good, is below their significant level. So meaning that is the relationship is strong, and the adjusted R square is 90%, indicating the reliable of the correlation of those variables to explain the variance of the output. So let's take a quick look at the outcome. We can see that this is a distribution of data. We can see the normal distribution of data here and how well the model performs, if there's any outliers and anything. And we can see that the model performs functionally and the distribution are normal. And on the right-hand side here is the result for the statistic. And we can see that this here is a coefficient of different aspect in the model, and below is the adjusted R square and the p-value here. And this significant value indicate that the model is strong, and the combination of these variables can predict confidently the number of homelessness people in Sacramento. So let's move on to the recommendation. So my recommendation is that further in-depth analysis should be conducted to gain a deeper insight in terms of mental health people with struggle with homeless and mental health issues. And a different organization should coordinate with each other. For example, Sacramento Step Forward should coordinate with National Council alcohol drug dependencies, and also this should cooperate with employment agencies and local church communities so that they can organize campaigns and free consulting programs for training workshop and anger management and other consulting program for people struggle with mental health and job. And also more funds should be allocated to Department of Housing for emergency fund and rental assistance program. So as you can see here, this is our unemployment rate distributed in a different zip code. And we can see that the unemployment rate get darker and red color, indicating the high unemployment rate. So we can target those area with unemployment rate, and we can coordinate with like different location of church community around those areas so that we can provide assistance to those people in those communities that need help in terms of different aspects like mental issues and job. And also the resolution should be tracked in terms of geography so that we can see the progress in the program to help people deal with their aspect and to solve the homeless situation in Sacramento area. So that's it for my presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm willing to answer any question in the end. Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot I didn't have my camera. I had it covered up there. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. My name is Molly, and I was one of the residents this year. Just a little bit about me. I got my master's of environmental science and management 2 years ago now almost, and I focused on environmental data science while I was there. I just started a new position working for the state with the Water Resources Control Board, where I'm an environmental scientist. And before that, I was a California State Sea Grant Fellow. So here in Sacramento, and hoping to use this as a launching platform to use data for conservation and also for social justice. So this is a concept very close to my heart, and I think it's important for us all to talk about. Okay, so if you live in Sacramento, or really if you live in any urban area in California, you know that we are experiencing an epidemic of homelessness here. This graph on the right just shows the overall number of homeless folks that were counted each year through the point in time data that previous presenters have discussed, and which I'll also talk about. So these are counts happening on one night each year. And that's graphed against the total year-round beds that are available at all different types of shelters. So we can see that there is a huge need here that has never been met, right? So we see that there's also a huge spike in the last couple of years. So while the shelter availability has remained relatively consistent, it's never been enough to meet the need, and especially not in recent years. So why is this happening, right? We have a lot of conversations amongst ourselves with our business partners, with our colleagues about why this is happening. And so what we're trying to do here is use data to answer that question. And really exploring the relationships between potential contributing factors won't tell us what causes homelessness specifically, but it will give us a starting point for where to target investments in the community. So in order to address this question, I looked into a couple of external data sets. So this is thinking more about what are the external factors that are influencing homelessness, not so much as internal on a personal level of mental health struggles, persistent joblessness, that type of thing. So looking at overall issues in Sacramento County at large. What I did was perform correlation tests between these, right? And we do have some limitations here, right? So when you perform correlation tests, you can't infer causation. And we also have some limitations in the data here in that the annual counts of people experiencing homelessness are done only once per year. So this really doesn't capture the entire picture of the total number of people who experience homelessness in a given year. It's probably much lower than the actual number. And then beyond that, I looked at employment data, the Housing Affordability Index, which is just a percentage of households in the county that can afford the median home price here, and then a couple measures of rental affordability, so there's the median gross rent and the rental vacancy rate, which is the total number of rentals that are available and open for new tenants. And there's some limitations here again, because these are annual data. So that means we only have, about 11 data points for each of these. So it is limited, but it's good that we do have data that goes back that far. Okay, so looking at correlation tests here. So I wanted to look at several potentially influencing factors to determine whether there was a significant relationship. So to do a quick statistics refresher here for everybody, I used a p-value of 0.05 as a benchmark for significance, because if you do a correlation test and you get a p-value below 0.05, that means that the chances of the relationship occurring by chance is very, very low. And then looking at the R values that are a result of the correlation test as well. An R value of 1 means that you have a strong positive, a negative 1 means you have a strong negative, and an R value of 0 means that there is no correlation between the variables. And then a null hypothesis just states that there is no relationship or correlation. So if we get a p-value less than 0.05, we can then reject that null hypothesis. Okay, so first of all, looking at unemployment. So Trong talked about this a little bit. I chose to look at it just independently in correlation with homelessness counts overall. And especially because unemployment is often brought into the conversation about how to prevent homelessness. But we see here that not only is the relationship insignificant, right? We've got a p-value greater than 0.05, but it's also a negative relationship here, a negative correlation, so that we see as we have more unemployment, right, higher number of unemployed people, we have lower homelessness. So I wasn't expecting to have that type of relationship here, which is interesting. So as unemployment has gone down over the years in Sacramento County, homelessness has continued to go up. Okay, and then looking at home affordability, this is a negative relationship as I would have expected, but it is not significant, right? We've got a p-value that's very large here. And again, this means the percentage of households that can afford the median home price. So these are home buyers, right? So we're looking at people who can actually afford to buy a house. So again, we failed to reject the null here because we don't have a low enough p-value. And then looking at median rent was interesting because we have both a significant p-value here, as well as a strong positive R value, indicating a strong correlation here. So this did turn out to be statistically significant, which allows us to reject the null, and we can conclude that there is a positive correlation here. Okay. So a bonus analysis here, I also looked at the rental vacancy rate, as I mentioned, which has plummeted in recent years. So in 2019, the rental vacancy rate for Sacramento County was less than 3%, which means that we have a really low inventory of rentals available for people. And so we see that there is a significant negative correlation here, meaning that as the rental vacancy has gone down, homelessness has increased, and we can ascribe a significant relationship there. Okay, so as I mentioned, right, we cannot infer causation here. We can't say that the median rental price increasing causes people to be homeless. We know that there's a lot of nuance here. But when we're thinking about what is the cause of homelessness, right? What is the biggest, most prominent thing, right? Homelessness is literally an issue of people not having housing. So it makes sense that improving access to housing would be an important solution to consider at the forefront here. So a couple of recommendations just based on these findings. Number one would be to increase the availability of affordable rental housing, right? We see that as the rental vacancy rate has gone down, as the median rent has gone up, people really struggle to find housing, and wages have not kept up with median rent here. And then thinking about prevention as well, providing rental assistance to folks who are struggling to pay their rent in order to prevent eviction and prevent experiencing homelessness. And then as we saw on the first slide, the availability of shelter housing is very, very low in comparison with what the need is. So there is a need to increase the emergency, transitional, and permanent housing as well for folks who have experienced homelessness. And then just in closing, just really want to point out that the language that we use around homelessness is very important. And, I've personally moved from saying homeless people to saying people experiencing homelessness, right? People who are unhoused, because we know that, encampments can be homes for people. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are homeless if they're unhoused, right? So just kind of being conscious of our language and that these are our neighbors that we're talking about, and we want to think about how we can best help them. So thank you for your time, and I will turn it over to Darina.
Thank you, Molly. Give me just a second. So hi, everyone. Thank you very much for attending our final presentations event tonight. My name is Darina Kondrachuk. I am inspiring data scientist, and I'm working on my last semester of the master program in data science at the University of the Pacific. I have some experience in digital marketing and healthcare analytics as well, and I will be happy to connect you on LinkedIn. So, I'm very also I wanted to thank you Sadie and Women in Data community to give me a chance to participate in residency program and to work on this interesting and exciting project. I'm happy to be a part of this great community who inspire and support our career development, and I'm very excited to share my results with you today. So homelessness in Sacramento is a problem that has attracted everyone's attention who live here. So I decided to explore what factors affect the number of homeless people the most. I have been using three main open data sources, which are Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, United States Census Bureau, and US Department of Housing and Urban Development. To explore the available data sets and to present the most important insights from the data, I have created a dashboard. And the heat map represents the counties of the greater Sacramento area based on the number of homeless people in 2019. As we can see, Sacramento City and County has the most dark color, which means that this county has the highest number of individuals who experience the homelessness. According to the US Department of Housing and Urban Development, at last official count, it's about 5,500 individuals are homeless in Sacramento. Also, if we check the historical data for Sacramento City, we see that this number in 2019 is the highest number that has been since 2013, and it represents a nearly like 34% uptick since 2018, when the average increase in California is 17% only. So the number of unsheltered people living on the streets or in cars has surged the past years. Official homelessness statistics mostly come from one-night counts, as Ladies has mentioned before, and like a lot of experts saying that this method is likely underestimate the unsheltered population. It doesn't capture the total number of people who fall into homelessness over the course of a year, which could be 2 or even 3 times higher. Another aspect that has attracted my attention is an increasing number in chronically homeless. If we look on the bar on the right, bar chart on the right side of the dashboard, we can see that the number of new homeless individuals, which was calculated as a difference between the overall homeless and the chronically homeless. We see that this number has been up and down during the last couple years, but if we look at the chronicle homeless people during that period, we see that the lane increasing, we see that the number has been increasing constantly. Governments and services providers tend to focus on their efforts on the chronically homeless. It's individuals with a disability who has lived without consistent shelter for a year or has had multiple recent bouts of homelessness. The two most prevalent and important categories of housing are emergency shelters and permanent supportive housing. Many California cities and Sacramento specifically have made significant strides in moving people from streets and shelters into safe, stable housing. But the numbers are still high, as you can see, and it increasing dramatically since for the last 3 years. Of course, there are a lot of factors that can affect it, But based on available data sources, I was able to build a regression model to define how the renting prices affect the number of homeless individuals. So according to the California Housing Partnership, about 1.3 million California renter households are considered extremely low income, making less than $25,000 per year. Linear regression is my approach to model the relationship between the outcome dependent variable, which is number of homeless people over 2013-2019, and between independent variable, which is renting prices for the same time range. Dependent variable is normally distributed, and also a dependent variable has a linear relationship with our renting prices, as we can see on the chart. So that's why the linear regression is my method of choice. The model performance is about 61%. And if we could, we'd have more data available about the other factors such as mental health problems, addiction, childhood trauma, interaction with the criminal justice system, and poverty, that all play significant roles in whether someone becomes homeless. Our model accuracy can be increased, and the model can be improved. So we will be able to define other factors as well that affect the homelessness the most. The current model shows that renting prices positively correlated with the number of homeless in Sacramento. And if the renting prices will increase, the homelessness will increase accordingly due to the equation below. So here I'm totally support the Mollis statement about correlation between these two factors. So what's my recommendations and for prevention strategies? First of all, it's eviction counseling and defense. Of course, landlords trying to protect their rights and possessions when tenants cannot longer pay for rent, but an eviction record makes it exceedingly difficult to find rental housing. To avoid that, tenants should ask for support from such organization as Tenant Together, is a statewide coalition of local tenant organizations dedicated to defending and advancing the rights of California tenants to safe, decent, and affordable housing. Also, next step is emergency rental assistance. It's a temporary assistance in paying the rent and bills due to emergency situation that may happen to people. Some of the states like New York, which has the state that has like very high numbers of homeless people as well, had experienced success with emergency rental assistance and were able to decrease the number of new homeless people. Also, the rapid rehousing programs that help to connect people who is in need with the organization who can help. One of them is a Sacramento Step Forward who helps with permanent housing. Also, I would like to add that if we would have more data available, next steps of the research could be creating an accurate recommendation system for people who are in need based on their situation, like when the list is ending, what is their current income, what is employment status, and their health records, with a list of organizations and services available before they start experiencing homelessness. This is one more way to prevent the increasing number of homeless people in Sacramento area as well. And I thank you everyone for your attention, and we'll be happy to answer any questions if you have.
Thank you. So that wraps up our presentations from each of the residents. So just a big round of applause and congratulations for all their hard work. So I will open it up to questions now, and I see in the Q&A there have been a few questions so far. So this one is for Chang. It says, how do you think you would improve the model going forward? As this was a first iteration, what additional iterations would you take to improve the model?
Oh, thank you so much for your question. As I mentioned in my presentation, this is more like a first initial analysis, so that we can find a way to indicate and identify those important variables that we can manipulate in the future. So what I think it could improve the model in the future is that um, um, as I say in the recommendation, that further analysis should be involved beside multiple linear regression. So what I use is multiple linear regression to identify the relationship of different variables into their dependent variable, which the number of homelessness people in Sacramento. But as I mentioned in recommendation, that as we identify those variables, we can learn to manipulate them in the future. So for example, the mental health illness and chronic homeless people, number of people which chronic homeless chronic situation, um, I think that sentiment analysis could be used in the future to dig deeper into the mental health issues, to understand where they're coming from, what causing them to go into the path and repeatedly become homeless over and over. So sentiment analysis and time series could also be utilized to improve their analysis, so that we can understand the pattern of the number of homeless people in Greater Sacramento, and what triggers them beside those variables in multiple linear regression. So I think it's not a conclusion, but a good model can provide a different path, and we can go from there to dig deeper into the analysis to find in-depth analysis to resolve homeless situation in the long term. So yeah, thank you for your question.
Thank you. Yeah, and this next question is for Molly. So it's how will you use this experience in the residency program within your new role?
That's such a great question. Thank you for asking it. So my new role is very public facing. So it's with the Office of Public Participation within the Water Board. And so we are going to be working on a lot of environmental justice projects, working with disadvantaged communities who do not have reliable access to clean and safe drinking water. So I think working on this has really shown me that there is a lot that you can do with publicly accessible data and bring that into solving social issues that we have. So I think right now, because we're more of a communication unit in my current position, I want to bring more data into what we do and use it to communicate and shape how we interact with communities.
Awesome. So this is just a general question for the group. So maybe we'll have Darina and Angelica answer this one. What's one thing you've learned through this program that you weren't able to learn through your classes or education up until this point?
Thank you for the question. So personally for me, I am really happy about this project because it gave me an opportunity to have a project from start to end. When I had to think about the business problem or like business opportunity for improvement, go through each step of analysis from the hypothesis testing, data analytics itself, and recommendation section. So that's personally for me was a great experience. So thank you.
Angelica, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I came from a business background, and most of my data visualization courses gave me very perfect data that was relatively easy to visualize and answer questions. So this program really put me through the ringer of having to be creative with the data that's available, because we're using open source data. We couldn't really get that deeper demographic data on the homeless population, as you know, it would been nice to. So it was a fun challenge to have to work around that and still being able to answer a question. So super proud of all of us for being able to have a final product.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And it looks like there's just one last question in regards to the residency program. And the question is if they're available around other cities in the US. So they are. So this one was sponsored by the Sacramento. So this was why we focused on Sacramento. But if you go to womenindata.org, you can find out how to participate in other residency programs as well. So again, a huge congratulations to the residents for all of their hard work. You know, you should be very proud of yourselves, and hopefully these insights you provided will go to good use. So thank you everyone for joining, and I hope you have a good rest of your evening.